Baba no mama stranded inkululeko. Awu. Comrade tell you. Say where yami. Kubega.
Amanda! Viva African National Congress! Viva! Viva South African Communist Party! Viva! Viva COSATU! Viva! Malibongwe! Roll, young lion, roll! Roll, young lion, roll! Chikijela, Lufasimba, Chikijela! Forward with the spirit of no surrender, forward! Amanda!
Oshosholo zakirela shayamapo nonge aka oshosholo zam shayamapo lomoya lo ya banda lomoya lo moya lo ya bawelela hello saka bawelela Amanda sisho umculo iculo enjalo ke bagerila abakwazi ukucula abalithathi. Hayi uComrade teliwe uthatha siyamthemba uthatha ukuthemba kwethu udlala ngakho. No ngisheshe ngaliyeka sengibona ukuthi tune iseyalahleka ibisihamba. Ngicela siqalele iculo Comrade sifukhona okwaziyo mtha ngakugcina ucula mfowethu. Kwenzekeni? Stala ngapha treasure refill. Ngisabheka amehlo lana ukuthi ubani abalapha. Umageba ngamgcine kwazi naye. In his youth. Shaya, man. Oh, okay. Comrades, can we still please stand and welcome the SG? Sebunzimeni Oliver Tambo Bambi Sanda Sam Oliver Tambo Bambi Sanda Usibambunga siyekeli na sebunzimeni Bambi Sanda Oliver Tambo Bambi Sanda Sam Oliver Tambo Bambi Usibambunga siyekeli
siyekele
nasebunzimeni
ngisandla
Oliver Tambo bambi isandla sami
Oliver Tambo
amandla
bambunga siyekele esinzimene isandla Oliver Tambo bambi isandla sami Oliver Tambo
amandla Chairperson, I think I took the wrong date to be democratic and give PEC members the opportunity to but that's a very, today we have guests. I should not have done that today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, comrades. Amandla. Viva ANC, viva. Viva ANC, viva. Viva Kosatu, viva. Viva Sanko, viva. Viva SACP, viva. Malibongwe. Gama lamakhosikazi. Roar young lions roar. Roar young lions roar. Wathinta abafazi. Finish. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, comrades. You are welcome. Kamalami nguNomagugu wakasimelane. I'm your program director today. Ordinarily, Comrade SG would have run this program as we run ANC programs with songs and all the other things that we say. But we have guests today that we invited, and we don't want to be, although it's an ANC gathering, but we do want to extend a hand so that everyone feels comfortable in our own engagement. We are very excited that we have the guests that are here today. We have business leadership, we have the leadership of the traditional leaders, we have the leadership of the religious sector, we have the leadership of the traditional health practitioners. So, we are very excited to have you and very happy that you are here with us today. We know that we did receive a few apologies about people who are going to arrive a bit late. So the open spaces, we are not worried ngazo ukuthi people are not coming. It's because we had actually received apologies. We do have leaders of the academia as well, I think. So we are a total full house today with wide ideas and wide perspectives, and that is what we want to get and understand. Our program, I don't believe, is going to be a very long program today. We are going to be discussing, or we are having a workshop that is dealing with or looking at South African Bank Limited Amendment Bill, and we hope we'll be able to engage. The chairperson is going to give us a purpose and an indication of how we got to understand and agree on this particular workshop. But the leadership of the ANC in the province of KwaZulu-Natal decided that it was necessary, and it decided on the number of participants that we should be welcoming. Kodwa-ke, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the chair. Can I request the ANC chaplain in the province, Amihlama wasabona ngimbona Babulvuno or Ubabulvuno, to come and open for us ngomthandazo, so that sikwazi ukuthi uhlelo lwethu lube luhle. As we know, the African National Congress was formed in a church. So sonke ke nalaba bafana nathi abangakwazi ukuthandaza ubaba umfundisi uyasithandazela sonke asithatha sibeke enkosini. Can we please welcome uchaplain uLvuno mfundisi?
Program Director, thatha ithuba lokubingelela uhlalo wethu kwiprovince, SG wethu kunational, ANC wonke ukhona, amakhosi, abefundisi, osomabhizinisi, egameni elihle lenkosi uJesu sanibonana. Only two verses that I wish to read. John chapter 6, verses 12 and 13. Kuthe sebesuthi uJesu wathi kubafundi bakhe, buthani imvuthuluka eseleyo kungachitheki lutho. Base bebutha bagcwalisa iziqabetho eziyishumi ngemvuthuluka yezinkwa ezinhlanu zebhali eyasalayo kwabadlileyo. Amen. Ngesikhathi bephuma eGibhithe abaka-Israyeli ngokomlando weBhayibheli, uNkulunkulu wanikezela abaka-Israyeli emveni kokucindezela kwabo inkululeko embili, eyokuqala eyobuzwe babo, isiko labo, ububona. Yesibili inkululeko kwakungeyomnotho owavuma uNkulunkulu ukuthi bangaphumi eGibhithe umnotho kodwa bengawuphethe kade sebeqelazeke iminyaka ewu-430 ngokokusho kwemibhalo. Uma sebephumile bephethe lezi izinto ezimbili, uFaro warealize ukuthi izwe ngokomnotho seli-bankrupt. So-ke wayesebalandela, wayengafuni ukuthi bazoba izigqila, kodwa wayebalandelela into abaphume nayo abayinikwe uNkulunkulu. Ezweni lethu sitholile inkululeko esenza ukuthi singahlala nomaphi, sifundise izingane zethu nomaphi, singene noma ngakusiphi isibhedlela, kodwa sisilelwe into eyodwa yezomnotho ukuba siubuyise. Iphutha hlalo wethu lwandle elenziwa yithi eshumayelayo ukukhuthaza abantu langamandla ukuthi bawuthola umnotho ezulwini, kanti inkululeko uNkulunkulu iqala lapha nomnotho ulapha. Ayikho inhlalakahle ezulwini, ngoba uma inhlalakahle isezulwini babumtolo kusho ukuthi asikho isidingo sokuphila la. Uma inkululeko isezulwini, kodwa inkululeko ephelele iwiqala khona la. Iphutha ke labefundisa ukushumayela ukuthi inhlalakahle isezulwini, yikho namaculo aculwayo esontweni ethi sihamba thina siye ezulwini yosala wena. Ukuthi ke mawufuna inhlalakahle kumele uzuye enkonzweni, kanti uNkulunkulu sinika inkululeko magotshwa khona la ephelele. uNkulunkulu akunika inkululeko engaphelele. Yikho namhlanje sizoxoxa ngokubaluleka la sifunda kuleli lizwi uJesu ethi uma senidlile nasutha kodwa lokho kusele ningakuwaste qoqeni ngoba kusasa nisazokudinga. Kukangakhi simosha nasemakhaya ethu izinto okumele ngabe siyaziqoqa kodwa singaziqoqi sikiyeke nje. Thina sigude kwenzeni into okufela zokuthi ngonyaka kuzobe kudliwa, futhi wabona masehlukanisiwe istokfela kule mize kade iqoqa ama-rice nani akekho gade omunye ukuthi udla kanjani. Umuntu ushaya intaba sesiyoni engenakuzanyazanyiswa eplatini lakhe, adle akhathale kuthathwe kuchithwe ngoba vele kuningi. Asinayo lento yokonga. Uma besingafundisana ngokubaluleka kokonge sinakho, sikufunde futhi kuba lokho esesiqoqile kusilekelele. Ngike ngaba nethuba ngisekwelinye ibandla labelungu uhlalo bangisa eIndia, ngafike ngafunda ukuthi khona ibank elisungulwe abantu abahlwempu bedandanisa irandi labo phezu kwelinye. Iyabasiza lento ukuthi bakwazi ukuyithuthukisa bempofu benjalo. Uma besingaba nalo mqondo wokuthi akukho kungasihlula uma sibambisene, uma singaba nomqondo wokuthi ophumelelayo emndenini akaphumeleli ngoba nakhe ethwebula idlozi labheka yena nophehla amanzi amnyama, kodwa sazi ukuthi ophumelelayo phumelela ngoba enombono ukuthi akafuni ukufa ashiye engenalo igama elihle. Kaningi abaphumelelayo sesibanika ama-label ukuthi uphumelela nje unesigubhu ahambile wasilanda kamhlaba uyalingana. kanti sihlale siya kamhlabeni ngalasikhaya siyibona igubhu ilengisiwe emgwaqeni ukuthi ungafika usithathe ke buyele nasekhaya. We need to learn ukuthi lo mnotho esinawo esikuphiwe uNkulunkulu kuumnotho ukuba sikwazi ukuphila namhlanje kodwa shiyele izingane zethu. Thina sazeka ngeingubo ezibizayo kodwa khona amatekenzwa ama factories abantu abamnyama balapha eSouth Africa esingawa promote ukuthi naba bathuthuke. Thina sifuna ukubonala ngelebuli yaphesheya ukuthi nokho financially sengi right. How if besingaqala ngokupromotana sisodwa ngingacabanga ukuthi mangiyothenga esitolo sakamtolo sengiphakamisa umtolo sezoba ngoba ngesikhathi ngithenga kuye imali mayiseculator kithi siumphakathi iyasisiza isizukulwane sethu. Iyasisiza futhi nabanye ukuthi babone kubaleke kangakanani ukusupportana. Wakwa esitolo sabomdabu laba basendiya umengenakho esitolo sakhe uyakurefer komunye oseduzana ngoba bayaxoxisana ukuthi mina ngidayisa ini futhi abavumi ukuthi noma kunemali encane kangakanani abavumi ukuthi uphuma ungayithenganga into bayamkela injalo. Thina asiyazi value yemali. Thina umuntu simtusa eselele. How if besingaqala namhlanje sibambisane? How if besingaqala namhlanje sisupportane? How if besingaqala namhlanje ukuyofuna ulwazi ukuthi babuDube uphumelele kanjani uzube la ukhona. Ngiyolithekela ulwazi kubabuDube ngingathi usezongontha ngazi kangakanani. Cha, akuyi ngokuthi awazi kangakanani kodwa kuya ngokuthi nginombone nginawo kodwa ngifuna ukufa umbono wami ungaphumelele. Kunamadoda ahlalo sengivala elithi iBhayibheli bathi indawo ehlezi kuyona siminyene. But phakathi kwabo sebeyinikiwe iauthority ukuthi abahambe bayogawula bakhe. Kukhona yethu wahamba enembazo engaloliwe yet phakathi kwabo bakhona ababona baphethe izinto zokulola. Lithi iBhayibheli kwathi mase sebeceka ihlahla lapho wakhamelela ngamandla akhe onke yaphuke yakhe imbazo ngoba yayingekho sharp enough. Mangakho ama-ideas alele emathuneni athi umuntu anginamuntu okungisupporta kodwa akaze azakhulume nako yedwa wabantu. Baningi abahlezi nama-ideas lapha uthi ayimangeke ngayikhuluma uzoyithatha usibanibani. Kanti noma engayithatha since ayizelwe uye ngokomcabanga ngeke iphumelele njengoba ingaphumeleliswa uwe ongumnikazi wayo. Sidinga ukuthi sizethembe. uNkulunkulu ekunika umbono wakho kodwa akusiwona wakho futhi ungowendlovela kuyona. We need to support each other. Siyadinga futhi ukuthi la sikhona ungathuli nento uNkulunkulu aseyibeka enhlizweni yakho ukuze siphakamise izwe sethu sidinga ukusupportana. Yikho sinento ethi umuntu ngabantu. Utho ngathi ngaphandle kwethu akukho kungavela. uNkulunkulu abusisene kuzwela ke sithobisa amakhanda. uNkulunkulu wezizwe zonke wemindeni yonke obaba mkhulu. iBhayibheli lithi wena ungiyise wenkosi yethu Jesu Kristu futhi usidale sonke ngomfuziselo wakho nokukhomba ukuthi usiphe sonke amandla ngokulinganayo ukuba sizithuthukise. Ngiyaqonda futhi ngiyakholwa ukuthi ayikho inhlala kahle kuwe engaqali la emhlabeni ngoba uma inhlala kahle siyoyithola ngoba sesifike kuwe kusho ukuthi izulu lakho liyancikisela. Kodwa uNkulunkulu siyaqonda ukuthi njengembhalo isho uthe umhlaba siwubuse siwunqobe. Kukhomba ke ayikho inkosi ebusayo ingenawo umnotho. Kukhomba ukuthi umnotho ubekile ezandleni zethu. Siyakubonga lokho senzele khona. Namhlanje sizoxoxa ngakho. Asilekeleleke inkosi ukuthi masiphuma lapha sesixoxile kulolu suku namhlanje siyokwenza umehluko emphakathini esivela kuyo kuma regions esivela kuwo kuyikhungu esisebenza kuzo ku-ANC esiwuthandayo sicontribute ngama resources ethu kuze izwe nobukhona bethu lithuthuke. Akubusiswe ngokuhlangana kwethu manje naphakade. Amen.
Siyabonga kakhulu kumfundisi uLuvuno indicating that indeed izinto kufuna sizenze, we should not wait for the time siyezulwini, we must start working now. Ngicela ke comrades ngokukhulu ukuyithoba and quickly samukele uComrade or request uComrade uProvincial Secretary to come and indicate to us people esinabo, our guests that are with us, acknowledgement of guests and asiphe ne attendance. Yeah, ngenzela ukuthi okay, siyabonga no bad. Comrades, can we please welcome Comrade Ubheki Mtolo, Provincial Secretary.
No, thanks very much, Deputy Chair. Greetings to all compatriots who are here, led by the Secretary General and the Chairperson of the Province, Comrade Duma. Let's start with apologies because this is a Provincial Executive Committee workshop. We have received apology from Comrade Toli Gwala, Ill Health, Fikile Masiko, Women's League preparations for conference, Comrade Tlagani Pontombela, attending a wedding that could not be avoided. Comrade Shlomuka deployed to in Josiah. Comrade Nontembe deployed to function, the unveiling of tombstone of the late Premier. Comrade Stolemoloi, family commitment. Joe Mondutugo Spia, personal commitment. Super Rose Zuma is abroad. Comrade Namusa Dube, Ill Health. Betwell Mthetwa is abroad. Amanda Panemapena is abroad. Mondli Kiliza, family commitment. Spuema Zubugo deployed to by-election in Bongashlomuga. Comrade Vincent Masenti Mieni is down with flu, ill health. Comrade Koza, organizational commitment, I think it's Women's League issues. Comrade Begintuli attending a funeral. Comrade Zamogwake David Numalo, cultural activity at home. Then those are the apologies we have. And then people who are here, it's guests that are here. It's a Veterans League, they are here. ANC Women's League delegation, COSATU, South African Communist Party, South African Student Congress, Congress of South African Students, YCL, the House of Traditional Leaders, Santaco, Rural Societies, leadership of NAFCOC, they are here. A religious sector, CBOs and NGOs, Black Lawyers Association, South African Medical Association, Divisional Executive Property Finance, Nedbank is here, Standard Bank is here, FNB is here, ABSA is here, and Kipiela, Mr. Andrew Kipiela from the coordinator of the Growth Coalition is here. Then we also have academics from University of KwaZulu-Natal. We got Dr. Simbarasha Tembo from UKZN School of Law. We got Ntokozo Mnyandu from UKZN School of Law. Dr. Nyasha Chihuahua from University of KwaZulu-Natal, Comrade Fikile Zondi from University of KwaZulu-Natal, I think it's public governance, Professor Saipet Mutareko, UKZN College of Law and Management, because sometimes SG we are doubted of our qualifications. This was one of my supervisors when I was doing my honors degree. In case you doubt that I possess, you must just go to him. Dr. Mdebele from University of KwaZulu-Natal, not our Mafia. Dr. Mtuli from University of KwaZulu-Natal. Those are the guests that are here. But we have seen a lot of traditional leaders that are here. Even the Khoisan traditional leadership led by Dr. Vivian Kok, they are here. We've also seen traditional healers that are here. Then we find we got our mayors of ANC municipalities. They are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Nopala. Sikbongele now ukuthi USG took you to China for 2 weeks and you came back with a suit. Yeah, exactly. The only thing I showed USG is sicela umgunde manje kanti. You would have then completed the look that we aspire to as the PEC in this province. Siyabonga. And thank you very much to everyone who is here. Let me just speak to the program so that I am hoping that all of us have a program in front of us and we can follow. Nopala has just concluded the acknowledgements of guests. We will then have an opening address by Provincial Chair, who will then be introducing to us the Secretary General of the African National Congress. And then we have a presentation, and SG will be giving us a presentation on the establishment of a state bank as a resolution of the African National Congress. What is it that we envisage as the ANC, and what is it that we want to achieve? We then get a presentation from Dr. Tembo, a presentation on the summary of the post-bank amendment bill, and after that we then have engagements. I'm told that we are having lunch at 1, but that will depend on where we are in terms of our engagements. And then after that we get a presentation of summary of the resolutions by a provincial secretary. Then we have closing remarks from the provincial chair. The purpose here, colleagues and comrades, is that when you are leading society and you lead society in this day and age, you cannot lead society using common sense. Everything that we do now as the African National Congress must be informed by science, must be informed by what is needed by our community, but must be academically sound. We do have our own engagements as the PEC. We engage amongst ourselves. Not that we doubt the presentation, Dr. Tembo, Provincial Secretary, on all the other comrades who have masters and so forth. But we also from time to time want to get a sense from people who are in the society so that we are able to say, are we in line? And is what we are doing what is actually needed by society? We don't always want to speak to ourselves. We do want to engage with society so that we get a proper picture. We accept criticism. We accept criticism. We welcome criticism. In fact, we do call for criticism. The only thing that we request is that it must be constructive criticism so that we are able to implement policies of the African National Congress in a proper manner. Comrades, let me then welcome the provincial chairperson of the African National Congress, Comrade Tombeni, to come and give us the opening address in this provincial workshop. In this matter, Comrade Tusponiso.
No, I think they're intimidated, Comrade. This is a workshop, and already in the minds, what is encroaching is that the debate must be in higher proposition. So, Comrade, I'm not sure whether to clap or just gaze at the direction and advance the direction probably later. Let us recognize the presence of our Secretary General, Comrade Fikile Mbalula. Siyakubingelela Jola, and we're welcoming you into this beloved province of KwaZulu-Natal. In our midst, we've been told already that the entire PC in KwaZulu-Natal is here, and the program director is the deputy chair, Comrade Makuchwa. Comrade Langamandla has already started the process. Let us recognize the president of SACP, led by Comrade Jonen. We recognize your leadership, Comrade Chair. We've got Kosatu in our midst, led by Comrade P. Duma, the chairperson. And in our midst, we have the leadership that is coming from all the POA structures, as Comrade Nobody has already alluded. We've got Amakosi present, and welcome and Siyakulega Emakosini in our midst. The religious sector, led by our chaplain, Ubabulu Vunu, has already just spoken. We recognize your presence and your grace. The academia present, and we are told that Dr. Simbrasha Tembo is leading them because he's going to talk. And in our midst, we've got Dr. Vilakazi from Itala. We've invited them in that fashion. Let us also recognize the entire leadership cohort that is present in this August House, and which is given a platform as a workshop where we'll be workshopping our minds, where we'll be shaping the direction and the plateau process of where we want to take the South African process going forward. The fourth estate that is also affording us the opportunity today as well, Chair, they are recognized, and the entire workshop, we want to recognize them as such. Let us start, Chair, by just thanking the role that has been played by Comrade Secretary General, Comrade Vuta, Comrade SG. We want to thank you profusely for spending this time today. Indeed, it means a lot for us. Indeed, your support has been felt, and we are the province that is privileged enough that you, after fresh from China, you had to spend the time in this workshop, and that for us is a delicacy. We want just to thank you. Let us give the Comrade Secretary General a huge round of applause, Comrade. We don't take it lightly, Jola, that on this weekend, Saturday, we are here as well shaping what might transform the current scenario of the country, what might also transform and juxtapose the issue of what ought to be done at the level of us entering the fray of owning the proper means of production. Because when you talk about the banking sector, it is part of the site of struggle. It is part of the things that must be known. I would want also just to thank the SG over the last month. He has dealt with fundamental matters. You dealt, Comrade, with the issue of US matter, Comrade SG. We take pride in you advancing the position of the ANC, painful as it is, even outlining what we stand in terms of the South-to-South relationship and what has been brutally done by NATO. Unashamedly to so, we have advanced that argument. We've also seen you, Comrade SG, dealing with Annika Lawson. I'm sure that was not one of your nicest interviews, but you dealt with the length and breadth. We are glad that we are able to amass the wealth that is critical for the ANC. Comrade Chair, let me start by highlighting that the reason behind for us today, we want to partake in the journey on this amendment. And as the province of KwaZulu-Natal, the reality is that we contribute towards the GDP. We amongst those provinces at the core that must also assist. I'm just going to outline by citing a mythology first. In Roman mythology, Romulus and Remus are twin brothers whose legendary story became the cornerstone for the founding of the city of Rome and the Roman Empire. By Romulus, after killing his brother Remus, it is our argument here as leadership in KwaZulu-Natal that the story of the Post Bank and Itala, as you know, Comrade SG, Tina, we have a bank at Itala, and I'm just going to expatiate later on it, should not be where one brother is being sacrificed over other to live. Instead, we must borrow from the Solomonic wisdom in the good book that the state is the mother to both Post Bank and Itala, and therefore should not choose one between the two who should live and die, but instead at the level of us, the transformation and the resolution of the ANC at some point in time of developing a state bank, it is what we envisage. It is something that must be advanced, and the House, we are also prompting the House just to deal with those matters. Some fundamental theories must be advanced today. Therefore, the purpose of this leadership briefing note is just to draw the parallels between the South African Post Bank Amendment Bill of 2022 and equally the Financial Matters Amendment Act of 2018 and their effects on the Post Bank and ITALA respectively. We further argue that the bill, although in the main deals with the Post Bank at national levels, the province of KwaZulu-Natal is the only province that for 60 years operate a state-owned entity that operates under the Banks Act, and therefore its interest ought to be examined. We further draw the pros and cons with the South African Post Bank Amendment Bill to inform our strategic position and political ideological stance. Given that the spheres of government are spherical and therefore deemed equal with differing national, provincial, and local priorities, it will be counter-revolutionary for any of our policy decision makers, whether at national or local, choose who becomes Romulus or Remus between the Post Bank and ITALA. And we've already finalized that the argument at the end of the day, the issue of the state bank must be equipped in such a way that the material condition is shaped enough for every one of us to benefit. I'm glad Mbalula is highlighting that in our midst we've got those banks and their interest at the center. I hope and pray that they will want to see a proper transformation, because at this point in time, they are running a monopoly. At this point in time, we don't see the juicy details of transformation within those main banks. But it's a theory that the ANC-led government is here to advance so that we amend the bill and assist our people. It will be counter-revolutionary already as well to think that South Africa, at the level of a country, will just operate freely without us entering and encroaching on the space of a banking sector. I'm sure we are also aware of that. I could just highlight that at the level of province of KwaZulu-Natal, we've just appropriated 147 billion in this financial year. Just imagine that amount or that appropriation goes to one bank. On the same day, how much interest already is convoluted and is defined at that level of the bank. But what benefits do we get at the end of the day? The issue for the KZN province is not to bring the issue of ITALA when engaging on matters that equally affect the Post Bank, as both exist for national imperatives. One hand has to become KwaZulu-Natal provincial government business enterprise that plays a unique role in rural banking and housing finance. Many of ITALA's personal and business banking customers have little to no other access to banking and finance. Over the last few years, it has therefore become a developmental imperative that ITALA take the next step in its evolution to finalize its status by obtaining a banking license. I'm sure we are all aware that we are not even defining ITALA as the, because there are shortcomings when it comes to that bank. But it is us that must decide at the level of what ought to be done and done in a correct way, and we transform the lives of our people. So we are here just to present that theorem. But in respect of Post Bank technological sophistication as a bank, it currently only offers internet banking facilities to individual internal staff, no groups, and is not yet available to external customers. In addition, it has essentially taken customer deposit and saving and held them until withdrawn. Post Bank is in process of rolling out products to facilitate payments, transactional capability for customers, but does not yet have an established track record in the market. It is also not as plugged into the national payment system, does not have the skills and infrastructure systems such as the sophisticated IT system, credit scoring infrastructure, or its own Post Bank ATM machines necessary to facilitate complex transactional banking, which is the type of banking that ITALA's target customer base is required. I've been advancing the argument, Comrade Chairperson, Comrade SG, that at some point in time, Absa Bank was bought by a UK. And just imagine if we had a bond, or if we have a bond in South Africa, bonding with Absa Bank, the bank that is owned abroad, yet you have a home in South Africa. What does that mean? It means that you've got a house, geographical, that is located in a foreign space, because you don't have the total control, because it is owned in two geographical jurisdictions. Those are contradictions, and we are sharpened enough, and this Amendment Act must also deliberate and deal with those matters. We are raising these pertinent matters not to pour water at a national goal to reposition to Post Bank, but due to shine the light that the province of KwaZulu-Natal has led in this policy era and is the pathfinder. Recently, the province of Gauteng, led by MEC of Economic Affairs, Comrade Mbalula, led a delegation to meet with Itala on the tech fact-finding mission on how to establish and run a bank within the state. It is now history that Gauteng Premier has made their policy goal during his maiden sober. Leadership welcomes the Gauteng stand as they join the KZN driving financial inclusion of the masses that are largely ignored by the monopolistic commercial banks controlling the banking industry. I'm sure we know the history of the Banks Act of 1990 amendment in 2016 plans to do some in due course. Management at the time were advised that the application did not meet all the requirements for a banking license. I wouldn't want to bore you with finer detail and deeper analysis because you know the acts, you know the details, but the main aim today and the thrust is to advance a concept of how to drive a transformational agenda using these apparatus. And I'm sure all of us who are here today are understanding or are in a view that these three spheres of government are a site of struggle. And if we're involved in a site of struggle, we stand to make sure that our people benefit at the end of the day. As a result, a key recruital impediment to Itala's application for a banking license was not remitted by the FMMAA and as had been hoped for. And we want to advance because we're not going to be long. We just want to highlight some of these issues, Comrade Chairperson, that effectively in terms of Section 2 amendment, the Post Bank that was previously owned by the Post Office is being removed from Post Office ownership into a formed entity that will become the bank controlling company, which will, however, still report to the Minister of Communications and Technologies. This move was necessitated by the fact that the Post Office has gotten under financial stress close to insolvency, which rendered it no longer satisfying the conditions of the Banking Act. The new bank controlling company is somewhat movement of chairs to avoid a non-compliance with the bank. In KZN Democratic Revolution context, I want just to advance 3 points, then I introduce the Comrade Secretary General. Proposed Section 2G addition with the wording acting as the commercial bank owned by the state to render financial and banking service to the public is confusing as to whether this new formation of the Post Bank is the genesis of the formation of a long envisaged state bank as per Democratic Revolution intention, or is it just a continuation of shifting of chess pieces to further deflect from the formation of a state bank? It is thus a lost opportunity by the state not to be bold enough seize this opportunity and sponsor the formation of a full-fledged state bank once and for all. Province like KZN has its own banking and developmental finance, as I've already highlighted, and this must be juxtaposed in a correct way so that we know that this full-fledged bank will have the KZN government-owned financial institution as partners in delivering the developmental agenda, which will be the funding areas of the said state bank. Notwithstanding the above glaring cowardice to implement the resolution of the National Democratic Movement that governs the land, the following are observations which are unbecoming on the proposed amendment. The proposed amendment, Section 10 of the Act, to have the shareholder minister seeking the Minister of Finance concurrence on making critical strategic decisions is disempowering to the shareholder minister. We have seen how the entities under the Minister of Public Enterprise with their strategic policy direction being driven at a functional minister has been problematic across all the SOEs. We thus should not make the same mistake on the Post Bank, and therefore we make a proper compelling analysis. Those are the reasons behind we're here for this workshop, and we just let us debate it thoroughly. And at the end of the day, sharpen the tools of analysis of where we can come up with a holistic, conclusive evidence on the balance of this presentation that will be presented today. Then we know which one will be more tangible, which one will give us proper key deliverables. Comrade Chairperson also assigned us to give us an assignment of ensuring that one of our own, when is here, must be introduced properly, although it does not need further introduction. Comrade Ujola grew up in the ranks of the ANC Youth League. He has led the SASCO in his prime time. He has led the Youth League at the level of branches up until he became the Secretary General, eventually became the President of the ANC Youth League. And jokingly so, he will always just advance that he is on the nice step of President Madiba himself. So we're here, we are watching you, Comrade Jola, and We are fully behind you in ensuring that you lead the ANC. I'm sure you know he has led the NEC of the ANC for quite some time. The conference in December, so befitting that he must lead the ANC as the Secretary General. He is currently the Secretary General of the ANC. Let us all stand up, Comrade, and welcome Comrade Secretary General on the stage. Comrade Joda, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Provincial Chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Boniso, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC, Comrade Pegim Tolo, and all comrades of the Provincial Executive Committee, distinguished guests, participants to this important workshop, comrades from our structures, the Tripartite Alliance COSATU leadership present here, Communist Party present here, and members of SANCO, the Youth League and the Women's League. Comrades, it is important to come to this important workshop organized by the Provincial Executive Committee to focus on South African Post-Bank Limited Amendment Bill. Indeed, Comrade Chair, we just came back from China. China on its own was an important mission for the African National Congress. We went to China on the invitation of the Communist Party of China in a study tour. We were 21 all in all, and which include members of the Provincial Executive Committees, and as well as important departments at national level of the African National Congress, which is policy research, political education, organizing and building, an economic transformation committee led by the Secretary General. It's our first engagement at an international level post-national conference with our important ally, which is China, in the grueling geopolitical environment that we seek ourselves to intervene and pronounce ourselves amidst attacks and pushbacks to what we seek to do, particularly Russia and Ukraine, which we define as a proxy war. You will remember that in our strategy, not in our strategy and tactics, in our conference resolution, we talk about the Wolverine doctrine, which is led by the United States of America, which contests the new developing world, which we subscribe to, multipolar, not the continued unipolar imposition on the world. Multipolar, which means all of us have got a say in terms of the geopolitical environment, not one single superpower imposing itself as a world policeman. We have taken a view which they say we don't take a stand. We have taken a stand against war. That is the stand we have taken. And this is what our comrades must understand in the world. And this question is very debatable, because those who want us to take a stand want us to say we take a stand in favor of so and so. We've deliberately not taken that position. We are not in favor of the promotion of war. For we know that the issues at stake is not just one-way traffic, that one country is wrong and all of that. We equally embrace the United Nations Charter, and that is why we're equally vocal about the territorial integrity. And at the same time, we talk about sovereignty of nation state in this particular regard. So territorial integrity in the context of what is going on means many things to many people, and in particular to Russia and to Ukraine and NATO. So proxy war means you are fighting a war on behalf of others, which is what we are not about. And now we are being attacked that we give arms which we did not give. And then some among us then say, no, you are going to compromise us in terms of global trade and trade between wealthiest nation and what we seek to benefit as a nation. We have taken steps to engage our trading partners in terms of what and where do we stand. But we have said ourselves we will not be bullied. Because bullying to us means imperialism or neo-colonialism. And that is what we are against as the African National Congress. And the steps we have taken to engage others and to participate in this particular situation of war in the Ukraine, it's not only us. We only bring even those who have taken a clear stand. And in terms of the delegation, it's an African peace mission. You don't achieve all the results in one day. It takes time. And then I see people who are not informed of what is happening in the world say, why do you go to Ukraine? Why do you bother about that? But the cost of living here in South Africa, you are affected and you don't know why you are affected. I've never seen such ignorance in the age of time we are living in. And the liberation movement is important, led by the African National Congress, to be at the helm of engaging. We have allowed, comrades, the space of engagement and in the generation of ideas to others. We have abandoned our role. We don't debate and inform ourselves and agree to disagree about what is happening in Ukraine. We have allowed the reactionaries, fascists, and forces of backwardness to dominate the space. And then we are in the receiving end. We don't articulate our view and put it across in terms of what we believe and what we stand for. We have allowed Twitter to define what is political debates in less than 140 characters, to tell us how we must think, swearing at each other. No more dialogue. The national debate has actually died. Now the ANC must step up in this particular regard. I give that prelude because it is important to this discussion, that of the State Bank, that the ANC have taken a resolution about, and that the province of KwaZulu-Natal take this particular initiative to basically contribute in terms of shaping the amendment of post-bank bill and basically give its own thoughts. So when we're in China, what is important about China is that they decided in 1978 that they're going to build a new city in Shenzhen. And then they've developed different theories, including fighting abject poverty. When we arrive in China now, they tell us that the past 10 years is over and we see the results of our program in fighting abject poverty. And then Xi Jinping have brought to realization the idea which was conceptualized in 1978 by Deng Xiaoping about the development and the modernization of China. And it only became a realized idea after 40 years. And President Ramaphosa talks about it in Parliament and say, reimagine, because Deng Xiaoping was the architecture of China's modernization program, which Xi Jinping is implementing. It's a relay. All Chinese leaders which have come successively have implemented this idea. It doesn't mean that when another one comes in, thinks that is more clever than the other one, they continue with the idea. To this particular day, this is actually realizable after 40 years of this idea. President Ramaphosa says in South Africa reimagine a South Africa where a train can start from Makado and come through Johannesburg to Durban and to Cape Town, speed rail. And then they say, no, he's drunk. And then he says, let's talk about smart cities, which is what China has implemented. And he says, this is not my idea. I've actually learned about it from the Chinese model, and which is basically been implemented now. Now, China is actually advancing in this particular regard in terms of the ideas, which architectures of these ideas of modernizations have long passed on, but the relay is actually continuing. So what we started with the RDP cannot collapse in our hands in 2023. What I'm trying to say is that none of us today can explain where is NDP. And we're so excited about it. National Development Plan. By 2030, we'll have half poverty by so and so. But we are not articulating that idea. The best model we learn from China is that an idea does not die with the change of leadership. It continues and get to be implemented. And that is what is important. So if we can keep the relay and ensure that State Bank was conceptualized just 10 years ago, we are implementing it now. It's an idea that must not die in our hands. So me and Mtolo were there, and so we will give you a good report. Now, this tour will be different from many other tours where everybody goes, learn, and come back and brag about knowledge. We're going to implement the good experiences that have come. We'll place it before the National Executive Committee. It is not just a tour about economy, it is a tour also about party building and construction. There are things that Chinese can do that we cannot do, but there are things that we can learn from the Chinese that all of us can do. And one of the fundamentals when we talk about the State Bank is the uncompromising, unapologetic role of the interventionist role of the state. And that is what is fundamental. That if they say in China, we give you money to build SOEs and then we monitor them, you go off the rails, you're gone. We can't afford to have a PRASA here that just goes off the rail and therefore you don't do anything. That is why we had to deal with somebody there, if you quote me something else. I realized in a year's time, season. Even those are qualification is in Zim, I found qualification in Zimbabwe. We have only trains here, she has builder and everything. We got positive reports. So we need that kind of decisiveness. So that was the prelude, comrades. We would like to thank and appreciate the initiative by the leadership of KZN to rally stakeholders to have a say and participate in the implementation of ANC resolutions. This is your organization. You should participate in its processes, activities, and events. And this is the basis for which we make the assertion, ANC lives, ANC leads. Today, the subject of policy discussion is the creation of a state bank. The idea of a state bank emerged in our policy processes as an intervention aimed at progressively affecting the structure and depth of the South African financial system. And by the way, we need to extend to say the architecture of this particular idea is the South African Communist Party. If you remember, their campaign of fighting diversification, intervention in terms of the financial sector, led by the Communist Party. When Comrade Blaton Zimande took over from Upu Charles, and then they conceptualized the idea, Blaton Zimande implemented something good from the Communist Party. Because this idea came from the Communist Party in South Africa. In this regard, comrades, the 55th National Conference further resolved, among others, that solutions are needed to address the unjust lack of access to capital, particularly by SMMEs, women and youth-owned enterprises. The transformation of the financial sector should include gender and race of the ownership of financial institutions and must also include the transformative and diverse allocation of capital from banks along race, gender, and geospatial lines. Employment equity targets need to be achieved in this sector at all levels. Realizing the importance of institutional investors in the allocation of capital, institutional investors such as the PIC must take on a more activist shareholder role in ensuring transformation in the financial sector. Government should move with speed in implementing the resolution on the state bank, including finding a way to capitalize the bank. Close quote. That is our resolution. Our strategic perspective, comrades, is that the overall project of transformation, the country rests in building of a capable state that have leverage in key economic sectors. Accordingly, the financial services sector is one such vital economic lever that requires strategic state attention. And perhaps an observation by Financial Sector Study 2022 makes the following assertion, I quote, "Despite the increase in new entrants in the banking sector, the market remains highly concentrated, with the largest banks holding over 85% of the industry deposits in 2020. The banking landscape is changing as banks face increasing competition from newly established banks, technology-enabled startups, and a growing number of retailers offering financial services, including credit products. Three newcomers over the last 4 years, namely Timey Bank, Discovery Bank, and Bank Zero, have played a significant role in reducing banking fees, as well as introducing different distribution models, for example, leveraging retail stores and launching innovative value propositions for customers, close quote. However, the same Comrade's Financial Sector Study 2022 further observed that, I quote, "Coverage remains an issue in the retirement industry, given that only approximately 7 to 10 million individuals have retirement savings products out of an employment labor force of about 15 million. In the public sector, 92% of workers have a retirement product, whereas less than 50% have a retirement product in the private sector. Coverage is particularly low for individuals earning a monthly income of less than 14,000 ZAR, close quote. We strive for the creation of an overall financial system with savings. Since we grow up and we were told that the most important contribution we need to make is savings. Credit, capital, and bond markets that effectively facilitate the creation of a truly non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa. This means that we need to build a financial system that promotes expanded access to economic and social assets for the vast majority of the South African people. We are all aware that among the major challenges with the South African financial sector currently is limited to access to finance to the broad masses of the people, particularly for black-owned businesses, especially emergent small, medium, macro enterprises. In response to this problem, comrades, the 55th National Conference noted that the financial services sector has an important role to play in creating and ensuring deep, inclusive, functional, and efficient financial markets in the South African economy. conference agreed that government should move with speed in implementing the resolution on establishing a state bank, including finding ways to capitalize the bank as one strategic step towards deepening levels of access to financial markets for the majority of our people. In this context, this workshop is critical in the discourse of how best should we go about in bringing this state bank to life. We therefore look forward to your discussions and expect your contribution to put on the table clear proposals to move the process of establishing this state bank with much needed speed. Comrades, our theory of national democratic revolution and the financial markets, as earlier stated, the strategic thrust of our national democratic revolution is the transformation of South Africa into a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. This means that we aim to systematically undermine the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, especially its economic architecture that reproduces structural racism and sexism. Our focus, comrades, is to transform the lives of our people with a bias towards historically marginalized communities. This includes especially communities in designated townships, hostels, rural areas. A principal task the developmental state we are constructing is to respond to these challenges faced by people in these spatial centers and provide them with pathways towards economic emancipation. In the context of the financial services sector, the mainstream financial institutions have historically neglected and simply discriminated against those who live in townships, hostels, and rural areas. Hence the campaign by the South African Communist Party. They continue to be denied equitable access to financial services. Istokvel, you know. It's a very important financial institution, Istokvel, including lack of access to funding for their businesses, with preference given to their affluent counterparts in suburbs and townships and towns. The requirements to access funding are designed to make it difficult to qualify and to exclude them. This is because in the current framework of the financial services market, access to funding is primarily predicated on one's ability to provide tradable assets that can serve as leverage. This usually involves property or other financial assets that can be transformed into cash by the banks in case the person defaults on a given loan. Essentially, comrades, access to these financial opportunities is viable only to those with historically accumulated tradable assets. In the context of South Africa's history of asset accumulation, the result is that only people in historically metropolitan and urban special centers can qualify. At a macro level, this disproportionately means white South Africans. The result of this is that regardless of how brilliant, innovative, and enterprising a person from the historically oppressed national and gender groups, they have limited chances for equitable access to capital markets to finance their ideas and commercialize them. This is because without historically accumulated assets as leverage, their risk profile is higher and therefore renders them unworthy of investment for the banks. So hlala singabantu baka ngibani loan shark. Yeah. Nephayana unikezela nge-bank card yakho ne-passport and everything else. So every time ufuna keep imali, end of the month ufuna kuyoshona lapha, and then get your card to withdraw. So you are a loan shark person. The South African Post-Bank Limited Amendment Bill is a crucial piece in the puzzle towards economic transformation of our country. We are convinced that our people will benefit from the enactment of this bill. At the same time, it is vital to take cognizance of the fact that the Post Bank is not been established from scratch as a bank, but it has been existing a division within South African Post Office from the onset, and was later incorporated as a 100% subsidiary of South African Post Office. Post Bank has been relying on South African Post Office as the parent company to provide services. As a parent company, South African Post Office has been responsible for its establishment. The complete removal from South African Post Office, which is required to give effect to the bank controlling company structure in line with the banking license applications requirements. The incorporation of the Post Bank Company as a separate legal entity has been critical to enable the actual application to the South African Reserve Bank for a full banking license in terms of the Banks Act. The banking license application process has been prolonged in nature with rigorous and stringent outline administrative, compliance and regulatory requirements from South African Reserve Bank that had to be complied with throughout. The workshop, therefore, will further update the stakeholders on the final steps to be taken and timeframes towards enactment of this bill. We wish you, comrades, a productive workshop which will assist in taking the process of transforming our society. In conclusion, the ANC is the principal architect. The ANC is the principal architect. We come from China, you hear, we talk architect. Yeah, very important. ANC is the principal architect. It's us who started this thing. And we are intervening decisively. And therefore, as the principal architect of the transformative constitutional democratic order in our country, a democracy with South African characteristics, wherein the state is accountable and capable of improving the quality of life of all citizens. This bill is the right step in the economic transformation process. So I talk about South African characteristics, and the Chinese talk about socialism with Chinese characteristics. So you see there is two things there that go hand in hand. Therefore, this bill is the right step in the economic transformation process. It's very important. So don't think that you are doing half-baked work here. This work is very important. It's going to have an impact in the lives of our people in the longer term in a big way. This is now what you call transformation. And that is why I want to applaud you, comrades, for this important work that we are starting here today. And I think all other provinces need to take keen interest in the pieces of legislation like this one. The 55th National Conference was emphatic and instructive to our government to fast-track economic development. This should be our obsession. You see, the work that needs to be done, and this is what we're saying with comrades in China, we're a collective now. We come from Nazareth. We elect a president to lead, but there is a whole document, vision, and themes that he must lead around. And therefore, it is our task to implement. Now, in July, we are going to convene an NEC meeting. And that NEC meeting is going to focus on what have we done since we got into power with 57%. What have we done in terms of implementing the manifesto? And what is still remaining? And one of the things that is going to come out of that process is this thing. You know, this year we say we must move with people's interest. But down the line, we don't evaluate what have we done to move decisively with people's interest. It's just people's interest. Everybody does as they want. We are in charge here in KwaZulu-Natal. Panyaza wenza ma green bomba lapan Gauteng. And then utu wenza imisebenzi posts of government. Very good work. Those posts are advertised and all of that. Shouldn't the ANC respond with the same vigor nationally, where we are in charge? And understand that this is the year of decisive action to fast-track people's interest and show that we are in charge. We will never be out of power here in KZN. We will be out of power. Dieke ndisebenzisa isixhosa sakuthi ngenxa yokuthi sinywabile sihleli phezu komsebenzi asisebenzi. Ngesixhosa kuthiwa sikhala siphethe. Siyakhala kodwa siphethe. Wenza ntoni ngalento uyinikiweyo ngabantu? Solokukhala ngenkatha ibintoni inkatha kakade. Into esicumza nje sidlule phezu kwayo sihambe. Bonakala ukuthi ANC phethe. Nalapha eThekwini noba siphethe ngongciphi makubonakale siphethe. Nje kubonakale nje kusiphethe sishukume nje. Angisho nigxotha abantu ndithi sishukume nje. Sibonakale because thina sicabanga ukuphatha kugxotha umuntu. Kuze kubonakale siphethe masitshintshe umeya sifake omnye wezicwathule ezifana nalwa. But bayenza into efanayo because lo ufavorish faction yabo. Ukuphatha comrades kubonakala ukuthi kufuneka siqhubhe iprogram. Mawuku education, uku transport, siqhube iprogram ye development ehlaselayo. And ngenza umzekelo like KZN, when we were not in power and Inkatha we're sharing power with them, we were more decisive, visible and organized. And I think you have covered a lot of ground. You don't have to be hard on yourself. You have covered a lot of ground, including other areas in the country. We have allowed negativity to dominate us. We don't promote the good things that the ANC does. We don't. We are one manje. People have now even believed to no, we have not done anything. Even some among us say, no, we don't see what they have done. Ukhulume phakathi kwendlu RDP. Uthi angiboni benzani labantu. Ngelo xesha utya inkamnkam. And what is that, comrades? It's our poverty alleviation program. Ayiqalanga nge-350 lento. Dala sayiqala. 350 fika manje ngoba kukwi-COVID. But sayiqala lento. Si-intervene kulento ye-poverty and all of that. We're hard hit and all of that in terms of unemployment and so on. So this important work we are doing here is part of the work that the ANC does. And nobody else will ever do it. DA will not do it. When they come into power, they simply go backwards. Yeah. And that is not threatening anybody. Go and see Cape Town. Go and see all the municipalities where they've been in charge. They will never implement this. When they came into power in Johannesburg, they said to the people of Soweto, we've got nothing to do with the debt and the liability of billions of rands. We are not ANC. Pay or otherwise, you are out. Straight. Last is who resigned. Ndimke up where China could resign from DA by Gauteng and Mas no resign. What last on behalf of the DA laqeg? What kubantu base Soweto, pay your services. And that is how we are going to reduce this liability. We are not ANC. You must pay. Abantu baxakana nento. Angangen babone bemacha nangemineng. So abantu bakuthi have actually accepted ukuthi something is amiss about us, and they too are shocked with the system because they can't understand why is this ANC so comfortable in power. I mean, people who are not comfortable, you can see them with their deeds, that these people are destined to take over, or they can even promise people that they will take over. They will never take over, comrades. They will take over as long as we are not single-minded in what we seek to do, and we are not organized in what we want to do. ANC here, up until 2024, is in power, is in charge here in KZN. And that must be very clear. Whoever is given responsibility in the government, we must lead from the front, we must be dominant. Angeke kukhulunywe indaba zesilo la KZN singabi khona. Kufanele zilungiswe ubani? Sithi. Ngeke zilungiswe umntwana. Unengxaki zakhe eziningi man. I mean, asiyazi noba ufuna uzilungisa noba uyazijobha or uzithini. But uhulumeni huyo ufuneka azilungise la. And our comrade have been doing a brilliant job in relation to that. So you've got our support, comrades. I'm not patronizing you when I stand here and say, in the ANC, it's the first time I attend a meeting of the ANC where you are going to talk development and transformation. And ngicela nibambe kanjalo. That's why even if I came from China, I've got other engagements. Ngathi ngifuna uyibona lento umtolo bekhuluma ngayo ukuthi inyani na. And so on. Because invitation is there. So I came. I've never come to a meeting of the ANC kuthiwa umenu. So loka ndimenyelwa nje uzo resolve conflict ye branch. Ukuthi I branch indibulele apha bendizaba ngumeya ngawufike nobhala. Zange ndabizela into enhle kangaka kuzoxoxwa kukho bill and all of that. I mean, this is the ANC that we actually know, that is preoccupied about changing the lives of the people for the better. Now, you have brought important stakeholders up, including ITEC, Onotex, Ben Bakokel, and the subject matter has been always about this also. How do we transform and so on the taxi industry? Now, these are the things, because it's the biggest taxi industry and the biggest contributor to our GDP. But they don't benefit. The only benefit they have by Mbalula, you know, for ipaget erengen. But this thing, it taxis yadliwa. Boni taxi, we are suffering to taxi. That's why I got lale stratweni. Maunga kibeli ngokawlez yahambi taxi. Ima noma ima kuphi because ufaneka cover score. La driver manga coveranga score uyayidla imali yami wena. Uyabona ukwateka umnikazi we taxi yadliwa taxi. So you don't understand their problem. And we can only resolve it class intervene ngelhlobo of this legislation that we are discussing here. So thank you very much, comrades.
Comrades, I think Imputka SG deserves a bigger round of applause. Thank you very much, SG, for providing that guidance. It is saying to our stakeholders that we have invited, where do we come from as the ANC on this particular issue, and what is it that we wish to achieve? And therefore, we would like to also get and receive their own contribution on the actual transformation of the financial sector. We are very worried about it because it affects us all. SG, as Kulumis who ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, we want to stand here and accept what you have just said. It is very much true ukuthi abantu have said so many bad things about the ANC. Kubukeka sengathi nathi we've accepted that is who we are. We were saying in Youth Parliament 2 days ago, when something is wrong, the media and everyone else is able to say the ANC government has done wrong here. But when we have done things correctly, we are unable to say the ANC government has done this correctly. So if we're right, it's just government. But when there is wrong, it's the ANC government. So we do need to reclaim the legacy and all the work that we have done. When you say we don't communicate SG, ngifuna ukukunikeza a typical example. Yesterday, myself and MEC of Etia were assisting the Premier because she is ill-disposed. And as we were engaging with young people, we got information in this province from the 1st of April 2023. We have hired 58,000 unemployed youth as education assistants. 58,000. But how many of us know that? What did we do about it? We ourselves discovered it as we were talking to young people. From April, we've hired so many unemployed young people, 58,000 just in one department, Department of Education. We are not even talking about all the other departments. So we are not communicating SG, it is very correct, and we should change that. Akufanele sibe iphathi yabantu abahayizayo. Sikhale nathi ngathi sama ambulance. Sifane nabantu abangezokwazi ukwenza ama solutions. We will change that. We do make that commitment. Siyabonga kakhulu. SG, I just wanted to indicate, colleagues and our guests, I know ukuthi laba baka ANC, they will know that normally we have tea in the room that is on my right. So if we want to grab a cup of tea and come in, we can do so. Just walk in, grab a cup of tea and some sandwiches or whatever that is there, you can come in. They know where it is. So they will not tell you. You just see them walking out and walking in and don't know where they are getting this tea from. It is available. But the intention is just we get it as we move along. Can I then request that we welcome to the stage Professor Tembo. Professor Simbarashe Tembo is going to be presenting to us a summary of post-bank amendment bill. Oh, doctor. Okay, doctor, please.
There is a professor amongst them.
So, SG, in my deployment of the African National Congress, I happen to have a college. It's called a nursing college. So, yes, early in the year, they had a graduation. I have a BA SG, I have an LLB. I do not have a PhD. Now, when I went there to preside, I'm waiting for doctor to come up. When I was expected to go there to preside, they give me a red coat to wear. To preside over this graduation. I refused, SG. I told them my gown is black. Until I'm given a red gown officially, I will not be wearing a red gown. Doctor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director. Unfortunately, I'll never refuse to be called a professor. It's something that I aspire to be. I've been given the difficult task of speaking after the Secretary General, but the good thing is that my presentation is very short, and I'll try to be as precise as possible. So I'm going to just start by asking a question, and you answer my question by a show of hand. So my question is, who here has in the past 3 years or so used the post bank? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Three people. So I'll estimate that we are about 200, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, thereabout. And only 3 people. Oh, did anyone end up there? Right, so
He's embarrassed.
okay, something just happened here. Okay, are they showing them? Okay, all right, it's fine. No, you can just move them for me. Oh, all right, it's fine, okay. Okay, so I can't see my slides, but I'll try to guess what's on there. Okay, it's showing. Okay. All right, so I asked that question primarily because I just want to know how viable it is currently and whether we really need a change. So if only 3 people out of 200 have put their hand up, it means there's something wrong currently, isn't it? Is that not so?
Yeah.
So let's look at what the government intends to do, and then we have those discussions in terms of what you think should be done afterwards. So my job here is very simple and straightforward. I am supposed to simply give a summary of what the government intends to do with the bill. So, okay, has it moved? Okay. So by way of background, the South African Post Bank Limited Act of 2010 created a separation between the bank and the post office. So the bank was a subsidiary of the post office, and this means that the post office owned the bank. So you know that if you wanted to use the bank, or if you want to use the post office bank, you go to the post office, isn't it? Right. So this means that the bank, because it was owned by post office, did not enjoy any full legal personality. So by legal personality, we mean that the bank itself was not recognized as a person capable of doing business, capable of transacting on its own, but it had to do that through the mother body, which is the post office. And this is something that it was amiss in that sense, because that means the bank could not transact independently without the approval of the post office and vice versa. So the bank had to be separated and incorporated in order to enjoy full legal personality. And now the bill that has now been established seeks to achieve that separation of legal personality by providing for the registration of the bank as an entity on its own through acquisition of an independent bank license. It also seeks to provide for the governance of the bank, so that is, the bill also outlines what the bank structure is going to be in terms of corporate governance. Okay. So the Post Bank currently functions as a bank, as a deposit bank, and not as a full bank, which probably explains why only 3 people out of the many of us here have used the Post Bank in the past 3 years. That is because the Post Bank does not currently operate as a full bank. It only operates as a deposit bank. So the current Post Bank does not offer mainstream financial services or banking services such as loans, insurance products, transactional accounts, credit facilities, insurance products, and everything that you find in a bank. So what does the bill aim to do? The bill aims to amend the South African Post Bank Limited. Okay. So the bill seeks to amend the South African Post Bank Limited Act of 2010 so as to amend and insert certain sections. The objects of the Act are to provide for the transfer in shareholding from the South African Post Office State-Owned Company Limited to the government, and the creation of a bank controlling company for the Post Bank State-Owned Company Limited. So this means that the bank will now be removed from the office and will now become an independent bank, which is owned by a bank controlling company. And it also seeks to provide for the appointment of the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer, which means that they will no longer rely on the governance structure of the post office, but on their own. So what are the implications of this? To this end, the South African Post Office will no longer be the sole owner of the Post Bank. This is primarily because, the challenges that are associated with the Post Office since the workers' strike of 2014 are common cause. The Post Office is basically non-functional at the moment. So it really not is an entity in which a bank, a fully fledged bank, can actually operate. So I suppose leaving the Post Bank in the Post Office will overburden the Post Office because it's unable to discharge its current mandate on its own. So a bank controlling company will be established with 100% share ownership, and this effectively changes the shareholding arrangements of the bank, and the government will become the owner of the bank. We have heard the bank has been referred to as a state-owned bank, so that basically means that the government will have 100% share ownership in that. So there are specific amendments that I'm not going to go through in detail in the amendment itself. And these primarily relate to issues to do with definitions, insertions of certain words, and so on. But the most important amendment that I want to just briefly outline is the bank's is Section 20A, which is going to be inserted, and it deals with issues to do with compliance, risk management, and governance functions. So those of you who actually have questions regarding the governance structure of the bank and whether it's going to be any different from current state-owned enterprises need to interrogate on how compliance is going to be ensured, how risk management is going to be ensured, and other related governance functions. So the bank shall have a board that is responsible for the bank's governance like any other company. So the rationale that has been given, and Secretary General here has given us that rationale as well, that it is imperative to establish a bank that can be more inclusive in its lending process, and which would thereby generate an income that would give much needed boost to the economy. So I think in your discussions, it's something that needs to be interrogated as well, whether this is actually something that would be viable, whether the bank will actually be able to provide much more access to lending, and whether it will actually contribute to the economy as envisaged. So questions that arise from this bill, and these questions that arise from my own analysis of the bill, that I'm going to ask, and I'm asking these in order to invoke debates and in order to invoke engagements in terms of this bill, with respect to this bill. So the first question is, does the government have capacity to run this bank? And the second question is whether there is sufficient ICT infrastructure to run this bank. We all know the challenges that Post Office has faced in the past. So if the bank is going to be housed in the infrastructure that is owned by Post Office, how different is it going to be from Post Office in terms of the challenges faced? Why establish a bank, a state-owned bank, when a number of state-owned enterprises are struggling with governance issues? And will loans and credit facilities be made accessible? And what do we mean by accessibility? Do we mean that you won't be required to have any form of security in order to acquire a loan, or do you mean that the interest rates are going to be low, or both? And will loans and credit facilities be made, sorry, I had already mentioned that, and what would be the overall impact of the bank on the economy in its entirety? So those are the questions that I had in mind that need to be looked into and engaged upon. And if I may ask if anyone has any questions.
We will take the discussion afterwards.
Oh, okay. So there will be a discussion afterwards. All right, thank you. That was my short presentation.
We can give him a proper huge round of applause, please. The program director thought that the professor or the doc is going to take long. No, we are going to allow the process for discussion openly. So, ngagijima kancane ungena empubheni ngikufaka emseni ngathi eseza provincial secretary weKOSATU is here, want just to highlight something bese ngiyakubuyisela Magutshwa nomsebenzi wakho.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to all the comrades. I must say, Chair, I understand there's still going to be discussions. Dr. Tembo has been asking us lots of questions. Maybe we must also ask some questions to him as a presenter as well, Chair. In fact, no, it's just two things, small things. We understand that there's a collapse at the post office. And we know that currently the post office is bleeding more than 4,000 jobs. We're talking about this post bank. But he's also asking a question which I agree with him, whether the government has a capacity to run this bank. There's a notion in his presentation that the collapse.
Wait, Bob.
Okay.
We are going to input and discussion. Questions.
All right.
So, Sizobuza will give him an opportunity to respond, and then we engage.
Okay, let me ask a direct question, Chair.
Yes.
He asked about government, if has a capacity, but I want to ask from him if maybe he thinks that this bank can be able to run under the management of our current South African Reserve Banks, the manner in which the South African Reserve Banks manage our economy. So that's a direct question. I'll come back to this one later. Thank you.
Siyabonga Gcwabe ipilonga lapha nayo kodwa ke kusezoyithatha Doctor and because we will give an opportunity for questions and engagement and what we perceive are the issues so that we all respond and engage. But we've taken that question. Can I request Umpephethu Babu Vilakazi to come and just speak to us, give us a short presentation as well on our perspective as the province of KwaZulu-Natal on the financial sector, so that when we start engaging, we engage from both angles. Remember, Dr. Tembo was giving us an academic understanding of the bill. Pepet.
Good morning, SG. Ngibonge ku Shepherdson and Magutshwa, Program Director. My name is Dr. Thulani Vilakazi. I'm the CEO of Itala Bank, which is part of the Development Finance Corporation arm in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm just going to make a short comment in respect of this aspect. Maybe starting from legislation itself. The South African regulatory landscape has what is called a gulf. In terms of our SA Banks Act, you have the commercial banks at the top that require about 250 million to be set up, or what is called 15% of risk-weighted assets, which is loans and advances. And then right at the bottom, you have the mutual banks that require 10 million of depositors' funds to be set up. There is nothing in between. Some of us have been in banking for close to 40 years. Don't ask me how I am, how old I am. And that gap is quite important, because when you establish institutions such as a state-owned entity, you need then to think about what's going to happen in terms of the prudential requirements and where it falls. Some of us who have had an opportunity sent by this province to states, to the United States, across the continent and having worked in other banks and everywhere, know that when it comes to a regulatory landscape that is restrictive, you need to create spaces for other institutions to come in. For instance, if you go and look at the Nigerian sector, you'll have what is called specialized lending institutions. And these institutions would be specific for a particular purpose. You would also have what is called payment banks that are also specific for a particular purpose. You will have housing or construction banks. I'm happy that Chairperson and the Program Director, our SG, was in China. One of the top banks in China that's got 1.3 trillion US dollars in assets was started as a regional bank. But what they did was then to allow the functioning of that institution within a regulatory landscape. So one of the things that ought to happen at some point, and I've challenged our principals at the Reserve Bank in this regard, is that at some point, from a policy issue, we need to locate the state bank within that landscape of regulation. That's my first contribution I want to make. The second contribution is closer to home. I'm not here to punt Italy, and I'm not here to compare the two. There's what is called the Pathfinder. Italy has been engaged in this for close to 61 years. There's been a legacy that's been created. Now, when I was very young, I was asked by the late Professor Alex Tembela, what is banking? And I did not answer the question on the spot, because if Professor Alex Tembela, those who know him from Hammersdale in Georgedale specifically, you would get 0. It took me 3 months to find an answer. And I said to him, banking is nothing else except getting that currency that you see circulating, that it must repeat and repeat and repeat and circle until you think that it's gone, but it's still going into the people's hands. Banking has to do with making access to financing. Now, I'm raising Italy SG because there are certain things that we have done. We know that when we were young, some of us were hot-headed. Chairperson was under the Lulu Johnson Youth, and my cousin Mzwandile Mbongo in Richmond and others. We were told that we must push the boycotts in the 1980s. Why? Because commercial banks were not lending to townships as well as rural areas. Now, Italy has figured out how then to create a collateral instrument utilizing Ingonyama Transport land. Now, some people will say, can you actually give land of the traditional authority? Now, in banking, there are certain instruments that you can use. For instance, you got what is called SGB, Specialized General Notarial Bond. In other words, if you are in a rural area and you have a head of cattle, we can say to you, here's your head of cattle, is worth such a stock. And when you sell that head of cattle, you split with us, pay for the loan, and you remain with the aspect. This is what in banking is called, in an old way, the chattel agreement. We're also not talking about that just now. We're also talking about pension-backed loans. What's the use of waiting until you are gray-headed like me before you enjoy your pension funds? We have figured a way of how then to make sure that we give what is called secured lending based on the aspects of the pension without delving in there. And I'm happy that government has created a two-pot system which then takes care of that. So the suburbs or near suburbia that you see across the sprawls of KwaZulu-Natal, the towns where people are building, is because there is Italy in some of those. And we know that in some of those there's also other players in the market that have indebted our people by taking loans to build houses, which should not be the case, because those loans are in excess of 35%. So a state bank has to answer and deliberate and play in that particular role. If someone has a personal loan that is now a problem to them, we at Itala can look at the house in a rural area. There's what is called replacement value. How much of that collateral can be used and look to pay off his debt. So the difference here between a commercial bank and a state bank is two theories: demand approach or a supply approach. I argue, standing here, that the commercial banks are doing a supply approach because they're asking people to join in. And once they've joined in this train, they figure out that they cannot enjoy certain things. A demand approach would say, what is the society looking for and what the society entails, and therefore then create things that are specific to society. And this is not just theory. Our SG mentioned the taxi business. Now, some of us who are very fortunate to have ridden in a Violent or Rebel or all those big cars, in fact, you can still see those cars in Duduza, Niger, know that it was our people that started the taxi business because at the time the apartheid government collapsed bus ownership by black entrepreneurs. And our people responded in that manner, and they formed that industry. Now, the way we are now lending to them, and what the state bank should do, is that you don't look at the individuals. You look at the taxi association. We have agreements with Santaco and other organizations where a collective number of taxi owners come in and they buy these cars, and we deliver 15 or 20 of them. And if one member is troubled by the economy and where things are, it is that collective. So we're not sending a debt collector here. It is that collective that is going to make sure that that taxi, on average, a taxi has to gross about 59,000 a month to make a payment of a loan of about 20 to 25,000 on their cars. But we've seen other players in the market where they've given them loans in excess of 30, 35%. Our government, SG, did away with the Usury Act. But as we speak, we are lending to people as if there's still the Usury Act. My last comment, Program Director, is about what is a bank and what are the requirements. That's why I started on the Gulf side, to say there's a Gulf that we see here. There's a minimum of capital that is required in a bank. It's usually 15% of your loans and advances. Now we know that the national fiscus is shrinking. So we need to create an avenue for a state bank to be able to meet these requirements. For instance, 15%, we currently as Istala are sitting at 18.3%, which means we're good. The other key ratio is the leverage ratio, which is very important. It's about 4% usually. We're sitting at 12%. There's also what is called the LCR, the liquidity coverage ratio. In other words, what percentage of the deposits that you have mobilized can actually now be utilized to manage a bank. Chairperson, Itala is 461%. I'm saying these things because it is our ordinary people in Botswana, in Escort, in Tlatikulu, and other areas who have mobilized savings in excess of 2.7 billion rand in this province. And we know, SJ pointed it out, that there's a challenge about the GDP to savings ratio in this country. I thought you were going to clap because those people are women. So a state bank has to find cause about the role of women in society. It would be amiss if in that board of a state bank, women are not represented. Not just urban women, rural women. I come from a village called the Mopela. I'm born by a mother, Okekile. I don't know how to translate that. And she was a teacher. Those ordinary women need to be represented and have their voice. Just like in Germany, where you have representative of labor and employees at board level. So it would be important. As I close, the challenge though, and here is the challenge. We would have proposed that the state start small. I remember many, many years ago, some of my friends were running Pepsi. Most of you know Pepsi and how it collapsed. And I told them that the best thing you can do is to start small. So they captured 5% of the market in Soweto. But they wanted to go big. And I'm still arguing. And I did receive a delegation from the Post Bank recently. And I told them, let's start focusing in certain aspects. You don't go big immediately. But what would be more critical is that we start sharing the synergies and some of the technological advances that are there. Yes, some people will say South Africa now has a penetration of 80%. But remember, I told you, that's the supply side. The demand side is us only at this stage. The last bank that was mimicking us was closed down in 2006. The so-called Bank of Transkei, which Professor Wiseman Kuhlu had bought for the people of Eastern Cape. If you travel through Eastern Cape now, there is no access to finance. And that's our challenge. Program Director, let me end here. I'm not long in Vishani Kakul. Thank you.
Those are some of the insights we wanted to get so that when we have a very broad discussion. Indeed, you know, South Africa is probably the only developing country that is not focused when it comes to the finance part and doesn't necessarily have specialized banks. When you go to India, different provinces have regional banks, but they have specialized banks. Provinces that are big in agriculture, they have an agricultural bank that focuses on women, that focuses on people abasebenza emaplazini. So we do need to really deal with that particular issue, and if we want to change, kuzofuna sikulungise lokho. Mphephethe ngizophinde ngikunike ithuba futhi later on, so that uma sithi siyafuna ukuposition ithala to be what we want it to be, or to be a regional bank or a state-owned bank in region, as we have been fighting for the past, I don't know how many years to get a license. Asithole kodwa response yokuthi how are we modernizing Ithala? There's generally a joke that is being made about Ithala out there. You know, in government, we've been insisting that once we've been able to put Ithala, or once we've been able to receive our license as Ithala in the province, we as government must be the ones who bank there. And we will do that because we've made that commitment. Kodwa bayasibuza Mphephethu ukuthi akhona yini ama ATM atholakala kuphi? And you know, when they trivialize that issue, kuthi wena uyethala uyokhipha u10,000 rand uyabuza ukuthi usuyolobola yini impilo. You know, that's just a South African way of making light of a serious issue that they are raising. So we need to speak to the issue of how are we modernizing Ithala ourselves so that it is ready to deal with the issues that we want to raise. Siyabonga kakhulu. Can we clap hands for the presentations that we have received? I will now take hands. The first hand is Sandra Skanopala. Ngisambona. Khabazela ukhona? Usephumile? Oh, okay. I wanted him to then conclude on his questions, but Dr. Tembo, I think you've taken down the first question that he had. Can I note hands then, comrades and colleagues? Thank you. I see. So that I don't make mistakes. And then when you are given an opportunity, you then introduce yourself. Thank you very much. Number 1 there. Number 2. Yes. Okay. Then number 3 at the back. Yes, you. Thank you. Number 4. Yeah, when am I? Number 5. Buy one, get one free. Number 6. Number 6, leadership. Is there a hand at the back? Okay, 7 Lloyd. It's number 1, 2, 3 lap. And then 4, yes, 5, 6, 7. Is there another hand? All right, let's take those over manje. Siyabonga. Ngicela siqale ngokuzintroducer, and then if we are representing a sector, we can indicate where we come from so that we note. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Chair. Kamala Mzwandile Mavula. I come from the informal economy, which was not, acknowledged here by the provincial secretary, but we're here. Our input on the state bank will focus mainly on Itala, because some of the presentations that were done here did not talk about the role of the masses in terms of ensuring that this state bank is successful. For example, if you go to Bangladesh, there is an example of a progressive bank that was started by street vendors. But we can also use Itala, to advance that interest of the informal sector. For example, just now, Comrade Duma has came up with a very progressive, initiative which is called Operation Fula. But if he had to discuss that with the leadership of the informal economy, we would have come up with a very, different approach which will be sustainable. Because the current model is once off. So we need to engage with the ANC more, and I fully agree with the SG. The ANC and the masses must close the gap. I'm glad now, because this is the second meeting. It was started by the regional secretary, Comrade, who started to invite the informal traders to ANC meetings, and we are seeing now the provincial level is doing that, and we need to continue to do that. Every time the ANC is having a meeting, it must think about the street vendors. It must know that there are street vendors here in Durban. There's so much good story that is done by the municipality. For example, as I was talking about Operation Vula, if the ANC had come first and met the people and say, we are going to bring this program as the ANC, then later the ANC government comes and implement that program, then the people will know it is the ANC that is doing that. But now nobody knows that this Operation Vula comes from the ANC. They think it's coming from somewhere. So the ANC need to work more with the masses of our people. We have great plans. We started, I think, 10 years ago. We had 2 cooperative banks that have collapsed now. They have not been supported. If you look at African Bank, it was started by the street vendors. But nobody knows about it, and we had to lose that bank because there was no support. So I'm glad now that we are being involved in programs of the ANC so that we can enrich the ANC as a sector. And even the definition, you will always continue calling us informal sector, but we are a social economic sector, and we need to change that mindset of treating the street vendors as informal people as if we are mentally informal. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mzwandile. Comrade Mzwandile just wanted to mention a futhi original secretary wakhe siyabonga Comrade Mzwandile. Can we go to the second hand?
Greetings everyone, my name is Mbalula from my SPASA program, but now known as Township and Rural Business Community Program. In 2022, 7 billion was contributed in our country's economy by the informal and formal sector. 2017, 70 billion grew. It was contributed by formal and informal sector in our country. But I want to be practical and bring it closer to eThekwini municipality. Today, every day, almost 12 million, it is banked, not to the system, to the hand of the individuals. Meaning, over 300 million a month, it is banked out in our economy or in the system of the country. These are practicals, these are day-to-day things. Hence, when we contribute here, I want us to take note of the experiences that we encounter. Now, then we took a stand to engage Ital. I'm happy that the CEO is here. For the past 3 years, I think, before COVID and after, I was sitting in the steering committee of Ital and eThekwini municipality, advocating for Ital to become the state bank. Difficulties, challenges within the officials, because of they never see the vision that we are coming out. Bringing, marketing Itala for free, making sure that people, Itala becomes fashionable, but never got the track that we needed from Itala. It was difficult to work with them, but we're still hoping one day that will happen. Now, 3 months back, we engaged ABSA. I want you to take note and understand how these banking institutions sometimes steal from us. I will make just one example. When we engage ABSA, they promise heaven and earth to us so that we bank with them. Now, because of we came in numbers banking with them, we found that 10 bank versus ABSA, there's a serious money taking from us. I'll make a simple example, airtime. When you buy airtime of 20 rands, ABSA will cost you 1 rand 60 on top. We don't have nothing, but they still take money out of us. But versus 10 bank, there's no charge on that. 20 rands is 20 rands. So as business people, how do you expect us to grow? Because if you are taking the money that we thought, that 1 rand is our profits, and you're taking it away from us. We are resorting now to fintech companies. They are